3 of the Phil Steele Plus tour. Now, we started this tour last year because the Phil Steele Plus is what I use for my handicapping. It's got everything that you need, and I want to show you how to use the site to its fullest. We put free plays out last year. They did quite well. In fact, over the last 2 years now, the free plays here on the Phil Steele Plus tour, 51, 23, and 5, 69% winners over 2 years. How about last week? 4, 1, and 2 on the selections. And the 4 wins, the Vikings, -4 over Atlanta. They won 28-12. Blowout. Baltimore, -6.5 over Miami. Couldn't get much easier, 59-10. How about Oregon, -24 over Nevada, 77-6. And Colorado State, -10.5 over Western Illinois, 38-13. The average cover of the 4 winners by 29 points per game. Let's hope we have similar success this week. And I'll have 7 selections for you on today's. And I do want to remind you, this is absolutely free. The best thing to do, make sure here on the YouTube channel that you subscribe to it. And, of course, hit the bell. And that way we'll let you know whenever the next week's edition is up and available. And also, we have a Wednesday Phil Steele thing here on YouTube. Make sure you put some comments down below. Let me know what you'd like to see on the Wednesday one prior to the Friday Phil Steele Plus tour. Well, let's get the tour underway this week, and we're going to start out with my average game grade game of the week. Now, you see it in the magazine all the time. The average game grade takes into account not only the score of the game, but the opponent and the total yardage for the game as well. Yards rushing, yards passing, points, and the opponent is all taken into account. If we take a look at this first matchup, we're looking at the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors taking on the Washington Huskies. Now, Washington's a 22-point favorite in this game. But if we look at the average game grades, Washington has played to 106 level in Game 1 and a 93 level in Game 2. That's an average of 100.3 on the season for Washington. Meanwhile, Hawaii played at 103 game grade, 87.6, an average of 95.3. That says that so far this year, the two teams are only 5 points apart. Now, if you flip to the magazine page and you look under the home edge, it's 4.75 for Washington. So the average game grade would say Washington by 9.75. The line's 22. That's a big difference of over 12 points. And look at this. Hawaii, against 2 Pac-12 teams so far, beat Arizona, beat Oregon State, so they're 2-0 against the Pac-12. Also, Washington has a young defense, only 2 returning starters. Hawaii has the run-and-shoot offense, which is pretty tough to defend. And Cole McDonald having a good year with 8 touchdown passes. He had 4 interceptions in the opener, only 1 last week, throwing for over 400 yards per game. The average game grade, game of the week, is to take Hawaii plus 22 over Washington. Now, the NFL plays, as I showed you, did extremely well last week with Minnesota's blowout and, of course, Baltimore's blowout. So let's take a look at this week's NFL play. And we'll click over here, go to the site. Now, we've got all the team pages are here. Here's your NFL. And we're going to go up to the NFL here as well. And we're going to zoom in on the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Seattle Seahawks this week. So let's go over here and click on Seattle and Pittsburgh and see what we come up with. Now, first of all, let's take a look at Pittsburgh. They're off a blowout loss to New England. Boy, was that embarrassing last week for the Steelers. Now, the one thing I did do is I went back and looked how Pittsburgh does after losing games by 18 or more points. Well, how about 6-0? Let's go back and take a look at the individual things. And I love the color-coded green and red. You don't have to look at the score and analyze it. You could tell the red here means that they lost the game. And as you can see, last year they lost games by 5, 12, didn't have any blowout losses. So the last blowout loss was right here, Jacksonville. They lost 30-9, and that was at home. The next week, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs 19-13. And look at this. They had a 439 to 251-yard edge. Let's go back and look for another blowout loss. There it was. Embarrassing loss at Philadelphia. The next week, they bounce back. They host Kansas City. How about 43-14? You got to love that. Any other blowout losses that year? No, but that's 2 blowout losses, 2 comeback wins. Okay, and you want to look at 2015, no blowout losses there. Once again, all you have to do is look at the red. It makes it really easy. Here, they lose to Baltimore by 20 points. Bounce back, go on the road against Carolina and beat them 37-19. That's 3-0 in bounce back games. Lost to the Browns by 21. Bounce back and beat Houston the next week 30-23. So that's 4-0 bounce back wins off of their rare blowout losses. Taking a look here, here's a blowout loss at New England. They lose 55-31. They just lost to New England this past week. Bounce back and beat the Buffalo Bills 23-10. So that's 5-0, bouncing back off losses of 18 or more. Come down here, take a look. 18, nope, no 18s there. Here's one right here, Baltimore. They lose 35-7. So a blowout loss on the road in the opening game of 2011. They're at home against Seattle. How about 24-0 the next week? So we've had 6 blowout losses, and that's, if you look here, there was none in 10, and I don't believe there's any in 9 either. All the way back to 2009, 6 blowout losses. They bounced back and won all 6 times. But there's more. Let's look at Seattle last week. Seattle's coming off a win over Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's not a very good team. They were at home for this. Seattle usually gets off to slow starts, I understand that, but look at the yards. Cincinnati had a 429-233 yard edge. Seattle was outgained by 196 yards at home by the Cincinnati Bengals. But there's more. There's another reason to like the Pittsburgh Steelers a week. And we're going to look at the scorebook, at the workbook. Now, the workbook gives you these spread records, which we'll delve into. And in the NFL, you get spread records for the side and the total. You get the last, take a look at the last results here as well for the records. So let's take a look at Seattle and how they do in their opening road game of the season. They are actually 2-12 straight up, 1-12-1 ATS. Last year they did go into Denver and push, but they lost the game. They went into Green Bay. I'm showing you right here in 2017. They lost 17-9. They go at Los Angeles. Once again, they were favored and lost outright. At St. Louis, lost in overtime as a favorite. At San Diego, favored, lost outright. At Carolina, they actually won in 2013. So that's their one win in an opening road game. At Arizona, lost as a favorite. At San Francisco, lost as a dog. At Denver, lost as a slight dog. At San Francisco, lost 23-10. At Buffalo, lost 34-10. At Arizona, lost 23-20 as a favorite. At Detroit, a 6-point favorite. They actually won the game outright, but they lost against the spread. That's how you get the 2-12 straight up, 1-12-1 against the spread. So you could go back and look. This takes you back 20 years, basically. You get these 15 years over here, 5 years over here. Go back 20 years and look. The workbook is really invaluable. And by the way, if you'd like to purchase the workbook, all you have to do is go to the store here. And let's go to the home page, go to the store. And when you go to the store, you would press the workbook. That's inside the press box. Here's the workbook right here. If you'd like to get it, it's 2 full pages on every team. You see what it has. It gives you this year's, it gives you the spread records, these games, and then also the annual leaders. You could tell who is leading rushing, passing. And this is for every college, every NFL team. The workbook is $40 and $40.70, but if you type in the code SAVE5PS, that's SAVE5PS, then you can save $5 and get it for just $35.70. It's on 60-pound paper, so you can actually write in it. It'll hold up all season long. You can fill this in. You can write your notes on the games, what happened, and really keep yourself up to date on the entire season. So if you do want to order the workbook, just go to the store and grab it. The code word is SAVE5PS, SAVE5PS. We'll get you $5 off on that. All right, so your NFL play this week. Oh, one other thing I want to point out, and I like to take line of scrimmage games as well. We're not going to FBS. We're going to go to the NFL. So we're NFL team pages. We're going to take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're right here. And we're going to take a look at the Seattle Seahawks on the other side. I want to show you something here. Seattle last year, when they don't run the ball well, they generally lose. You can see out here, loss. Look how the Steelers' run defense was last year. That is one of the best in the country. And they've added Devin Bush. And even last week in the blowout loss in New England did not top 100 yards rushing. Seattle likes to run the football. Only 4 times last year did they not top 100 yards rushing. So Pittsburgh matches up well in that respect. And Seattle also doesn't do well against good passing teams. And, of course, Pittsburgh can throw the ball with this guy, Ben Roethlisberger. So a lot of good things here. Seattle last year was 1-4 against the spread when they allowed 300-plus passing yards. And you got to think Pittsburgh's got that opportunity. So add it all up. Looks like a pretty good play. I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers -4 in a bounce-back game against Seattle. Now let's take a look at our workbook game of the week, and we're going to take a look at the UNLV against Northwestern. Now, UNLV's an 18-point dog in this game, and they're coming off. If you take a look here, go under FBS team pages, we're going to click on UNLV, and we're going to see it was a bad loss last week. They lost at home to Arkansas State 43-17. But guess what? In this game, one thing I want to point out, and it was unexpected, Coach Blake Anderson opted to return. Coach Anderson woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, said, hey, I'm going to go to the game, flew to Las Vegas. The team didn't realize it. And then in the video, right before the game, he walks in and says, Coach, y'all got room for one more? And ASU players who were completely unaware he was returning. Remember, his wife died of cancer. They had expected him to miss this game. They went into a frenzy and mobbed him in the middle of the room. By the way, this story is posted on my Twitter, at PhilSteele042. I post all kinds of interesting stories up there. The energy in the room was amazing, and guess what? Arkansas State came out and beat UNLV's butt, 209-98 yards in the first half. They won 43-17. So you were talking about a team playing at an emotional high in that game last week. So that's one reason for UNLV losing last week. But another thing I want to point out, if you look at Sanchez here and look at his ATS record, 6-6, 6-6, 6-6, 5-7, and so far this year he is 1-1. So he's basically a slightly under 500 head coach. But when you have the workbook, you can hone on to where guys are best. Look how he does as an away dog. 3-1, 3-2, 5-1, 3-3. It's his first time as an away dog this year. That's 14-7 as an away dog, and 10-19 in all the other games. So the one situation you want to back Sanchez and UNLV is whenever they are an away dog. So there's a nice workbook. And as you can see in the colleges, you got the 20 years over here. And once again, you can see who the coach was, and they change so often in colleges. Go back 20 years for the coach there. You can go back and see the conference they played in, what their conference record was overall season. It's all here, every team. And then look at these spread records. You go back and you can get spread records straight up, ATS favorite dog, conference favorite, conference dog versus ranked teams. Down here is versus top 10 teams, and it's all over the last 10 years, and it's all at your fingertips for each and every team. And here's also a little cheat sheet on the over-unders for the colleges as well. 2 full pages on the college, 2 full pages on the NFL. Now let's take a look at Northwestern, and something you might not realize last year. Look at their record as a favorite last year, and this has been a tradition for Pat Fitzgerald. Here's Pat Fitzgerald's record, 25-35-1 as a favorite, and as a dog, he is 40-25-1. So basically in Northwestern games, you want to play the dog. That was so evident last year. 0-5 as a favorite, 7-1-1 as a dog. The only game they lost as a dog wasn't in the regular season. It was in the Big Ten championship game. They lost that game as a dog, and they only trailed 20-14 at the half. By the way, when you get the scorebook, look at these halftime scores. That really sums the game up for you. You get totals, which I don't have in the magazine. I'd love to put them in there. It's just not room. It would get a lot more squinchy to have these in there. And then you get halftime scores on every game. So you could see if a team is up big at the half or if a team is trailing at the half, came back and won. We'll get into that in a little bit in the Temple, in the Buffalo-Penn State game. But halftimes are invaluable. They go all the way back, the halftimes do, to 2004. The totals go all the way back to 2003. all this at your fingertips. And once again, if you order the workbook, type in the code word SAVE5PS, and it takes it from $40.70 down to $35.70. Nobody publishes stuff anymore. Nobody puts out workbooks. They used to be all over the place. It just doesn't pay to print anymore. We still publish it because I like to use a workbook. I like to keep track of it during the season. So you can see Northwestern, not good as a favorite, great as an underdog. And then look at how they do in the conference. They've been lighting up the Big Ten. They've got a great record in the Big Ten, but in non-conference games, they are 2-5-1 the last 2 years. So you've got Northwestern as a large favorite in a non-conference game. In their worst-case scenario, you've got Sanchez in his best-case scenario, which is away dog. I'm taking UNLV plus the 18 over Northwestern this week as your workbook game of the week. All right, let's move on to the next one, and it's our misleading final game of the week. And clear off Seattle here. And our misleading final game of the week, we're going to take a look. And once again, you go to the FBS team pages. You can get them in conference order, which if you know your conference is that great, or you can get them in alphabetical order, your choice. I like to put the visitor on the left. I haven't been doing that recently, but I do like to put the visitor on the left. That's going to be Buffalo, actually, is going to be our visitor. So I'm going to click on them. Here's Buffalo. And now we're going to put Liberty on the right. And that's the NFL team page. Let's go to FBS. Once again, I'm trying to show you everything that's available on this site. So try to make sure you utilize it to the fullest. All right, let's take a look at this matchup. This is my misleading final game of the week. Here's Buffalo. They're off a 45-13 loss to Penn State. Here's Liberty. They lost, but only by 21 to Louisiana. As you recall, I liked Louisiana last week. But when I go through the Buffalo game against Penn State, here's what I want you to notice. Buffalo led this thing 10-7 at the half. They had a 270 to 82-yard edge in the game. An interception return for a touchdown right here was a key. Penn State getting a 74-yard drive for a 56-yard TD pass with 3:03 left, gave them the cover, 45-13. But look at the yardage for the game. Buffalo outgained Penn State, 429 to 357 in Happy Valley. Buffalo had 22 first downs. Penn State just 14. All right, we go over to Louisiana. Now this one, Phil Steele Plus doesn't have the information I'm going to give you. It's got a lot of information. As you could tell, they were outgained 593 to 361. But I go through the play-by-play of every game, every Sunday and Monday during the season. And, of course, I watch the games on TV. In this game, Liberty, when they played Louisiana missed not one, not two, but 3 field goals. They also fumbled the ball at the 11 of Liberty, were intercepted in the end zone, and stopped on downs at the 1. So they could easily have had another 30 points in this game and won it 65-14, and yet it was a 35-14 cover for Louisiana. Another thing I want to point out, look at Liberty and what they gave up here on the ground so far. 300 yards per game on the ground, 6.7, and this is nothing new. Look at last year. They gave up 5.2 yards per carry, 222 yards per game. As you can see right here, they struggled stopping teams when they run the football. That's what Buffalo does best. Buffalo's at its best. Look at these green numbers here. They like to run the football. Last year, Patterson and Marks were the top 2 rushers. Patterson had 1,000. Marks had 800. They almost had 2,000-yard rushers. These guys combined for 27 TDs last year. Patterson and Marks are both back this year. They're both averaging 4.6 yards per carry. Buffalo's at its best when it can run the football. Liberty gives up running yards. They had a much better game than the final score against Penn State. Liberty was not as good as the final score against Louisiana, and they lost that game by 21. Add it all up, we got my misleading final game of the week. I'm going to go with Buffalo minus 5.5 over Liberty. Now let's go to my streak of the week. And the streak of the week, 0-2 this year so far. Let's get it going, huh? And we're going to take a look at a game. It's Maryland against Temple. And this is going to show you another nice advantage to this website. Now, so many times, Maryland's like the flavor of the week. They're on every national show. I watch all the national shows like on the Pac-12 network, on the ACC network, on the Big Ten network, on the SEC network. I think everybody's mentioned Maryland because of what they've done so far. 79-0, 63-20. They're ranked, they're hot, they're the flavor of the month. And they are taking on Temple this week. And they're a 7.5-point road favorite. And, if they're putting up numbers like this, how's Temple even going to come close to stopping them, right? Well, here's one thing I want to show you. If you go back and look at the last 40 years' results, when's the last time Maryland was actually ranked? Well, right here, And just like we have in the magazine, not ranked, not ranked, not ranked, not ranked, not ranked. Oh, here's the last time they were ranked, 2013. They entered the rankings number 25. They opened the season 4-0, 4 blowout wins, number 25 in the country. They go on the road to Florida State and lose 63-0. Naturally, they weren't ranked the rest of the year. Not ranked in 2012, not ranked in 2011, not ranked in 2010, not ranked in 2009. Here we are in 2008. Ranked against Florida State, they lose 37-3. Ranked against Virginia Tech, they lose 23-13. They trailed that game. Look, 17-3 at the half. They trailed Florida State 21-0 at the half. Love these halftimes. They are so valuable in the workbook. And this is also right here. These are on Phil Steele Plus as well. And Phil Steele Plus, by the way, just $69 for the rest of the year. If you enter in the code word winners, that's winners, you get $5 off. So you get it for just $64. And if you get my newsletter inside the press box, you get Phil Steele Plus for free. I'll have more on that in a minute. But let's continue on. That's 3 games as a ranked team, 3 losses. Here they are against Boston College. They are +8, and they lose 38-6. They trailed that one 28-6 at the half. And against Miami, they were -3, and they only won the game by 1. So that's 5 straight games they have not covered while ranked. Not ranked. Come back here to Georgia Tech, number 23 in the country. They're a 13-point favorite. They lose 20-7. The last 6 times Maryland has stepped on the field as a ranked team, they have lost. They entered the season somewhat of an underdog, and now all of a sudden everybody's talking about Maryland. Meanwhile, here you've got Temple laying in wait for them. Temple had a bye last week. They beat Bucknell pretty good in the opener. Temple is a team that if you look at them, they as a home dog the last 5 years, they are 6-1 against the spread. Now that one, just go to the magazine page for Temple. Look under home underdog, under the right-hand page, home underdog. Check the last 5 years and add in this one. That'll be your 6 years. And you can see they're 5-1 in that role. But their new head coach, by the way, is Rod Carey from Northern Illinois. Why do I bring that up? Well, Rod Carey's had some pretty good success against the Big Ten. What kind of success? Well, let's go take a look at Northern Illinois. We look at Northern Illinois, last 40 years. Let's see how they've done against the Big Ten. Last year they played at Iowa and lost by 26. That's 0-1 against the Big Ten. What are you talking about, Phil? What kind of success here? Well, how about at Nebraska? How about upsetting them, 21-17? That's 1-1 straight up, 1-1 against the spread against the Big Ten for Rod Carey. Rod Carey did not play a Big Ten team in 2016. 2015, they lost to Ohio State, but only by 7. They were getting 34.5. So that is 1-2 straight up, but 2-1 against the spread against the Big Ten. Northwestern, how about outright upset win? 23-15 in that one. By the way, this -34, you see that in the logs right there? Todd will get that corrected by the time that this goes up. That 2015 will show they were a 34.5-point underdog in that game in 2015. At Northwestern, +6. They pull the upset. That's 2-2 straight up against the Big Ten, 3-1 against the spread. At Iowa, outright upset, 30-27. At Purdue, outright upset, 55-24. Actually, they were favored in that one. 4-2 straight up against the Big Ten, 5-1 ATS for Rod Carey. So you got Rod Carey, you got Temple off a bye, you got everybody patting Maryland on the back. I'm going to take Temple, +7.5 over Maryland, who's lost 6 in a row as a ranked team. All right, let's go to the FCS. And by the way, everybody asks, am I putting out an FCS magazine this year? I don't have to. It's $29 on the website to get you the FCS coverage. And you get everything. And I'll show you the FCS pages in one sec. We got Murray State playing Toledo in this one. So I'm going to click over here. I'm going to put this one on the – now, I need them in alphabetical order. I don't know the conferences right off the top of my head for the FCS teams. But I'm going to click on Murray State over here. And over here, we're going to click on Toledo for the MAC. Toledo is a 40-point favorite in this game over Murray State. Now, one thing I want to show you, and I think I forgot to show you, one thing I wanted to show you here in the NFL. Let's go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers against Seattle. And it's, when you click on these right here, click on the team name, that gives you the last 19 years matchups in the NFL. I think it's the last 21 or 22 years in college. Look at how the home team is done in the Pittsburgh-Seattle game. At Seattle, the home team won. home to Seattle, the home team won. Home to Seattle, the home team won. At Seattle, the home team won. None of them are close. 39-0, 24-0, 21-0, 23-6. So the home team has won all 4 meetings in the last 19 years between Pittsburgh and Seattle. This was the Super Bowl here. So the home team, there was no home team for that one. So the home team 4-0 straight up and against the spread in the Pittsburgh-Seattle. And this is really invaluable. You can see here that last week Pittsburgh against New England has not done very well against New England. They just chucked up another loss here. At New England loss, at New England loss, at New England loss, at New England loss. So as you can tell, they haven't had a great track record against New England, but the home team's had a great track record, Pittsburgh, Seattle. And these are just, if you click on the team name, then the last 19 years pops up. So keep that in mind. You're navigating Phil Steele Plus. You want to know the series history? It's right there at your fingertips. And it gives you the complete box score of each game. So you could tell who had the yardage edge in each game, who ran the ball well, who didn't run the ball well. It's all at your fingers. Let's see how Pittsburgh's done against Seattle. They have not allowed Seattle to top 100 yards rushing except for that Super Bowl game that they played against Seattle. All right, let's go back to the FCS now. And we're going to click on Murray State, and they are playing Toledo. Now, Toledo lost their opener to Kentucky by 14, but the one thing not pointed out there is that Toledo's quarterback, Mitchell Guadagni, went down. I believe it was in the third quarter. Toledo was down by 7. It was 14-14 at the half in this game. In fact, Toledo actually led the game early. Guadagni was looking pretty good. Guadagni got this 21-yard TD run to put Toledo up 14-7. Right about this part of the game, Guadagni goes out injured, and Kentucky comes back and wins the game by 14. His backup, Carter Bradley, and once again, you could click here for individual player stats, 4 of 13 for 44 yards. Now, Guadagni has a concussion. He's questionable for this game. I think if he misses the game, that's big news because we see Bradley struggled in the quarterback spot. Plus, you got big games against Colorado State, BYU, Western Michigan, Bowling Green on deck. Do you really want to risk him the entire game? We already realize that the offense is not as good without Guadagni at the quarterback spot, and I believe that happened last year as well. If we take a look at the individual player stats, we could see that the games he missed, they struggled in, and he missed a good portion of the rest of the year, and it wasn't quite the finish to the year that they were hoping for after starting out the season fairly strong. They had beaten their first 2 opponents big. Miami of Florida, they had given a good game to at home, but then Guadagni went out, and they struggled the rest of the year. Didn't have a great year expected, so you got to keep him healthy. They're a 40-point favorite in this game. Now let's take a look at Murray State. They played Georgia fairly tough last week. And if you look at the average game grades, and we now have average game grades for FCS, which is exciting. I'm going to be using these all season long. You look at this 65-4. I've got game grades back to last year. We just started it this year. This is going to give you a great power rating for each FCS team each week during the season. So you could see, you take a 56, you might find 10, 15-point differences, and I think they're going to do extremely well this year. And nobody knows anything about the FCS, so you'll become an expert on the FCS, just the FCS version of Phil Steele Plus. If you go here to the homepage, and go to the store, by the way, you can click on the FCS only for $29. If you type in the code word winners, it's yours for $24. If you want to get FCS overall, it's $69. Type in the code word winners, it's $64. Or just subscribe to Inside the Press Box. When you subscribe to Inside the Press Box, if you type in the code word STEEL19, that's STEELE 19, you can take $20 off. So this would become $129, and you get Phil Steele Plus for free. You can go to InsideThePressBox.com to order that, or you could order it right here on the website. Either way, take $20 off with the code word STEEL19, and you get Phil Steele Plus for free. But let's go back here now to Murray State and a couple things I want to show you in this one. And when you click on Toledo, Murray State, they haven't played each other. So this would just say haven't met. Look what we do for the FCS. This tells you how Toledo is done against every FCS foe they've played since 2000. Wow, mind-blowing. This tells you how Murray State is done against FBS opponents. Now, Murray State last week was a 49-point dog against Georgia, and they covered. Look at this. This red here, these are how the FBS team did. Murray State's covered 4 of their last 5 against FBS teams. They lost Kentucky by 38. Very good Louisville team, but only by 45. And you're looking at the Illinois game. They did not cover in that one, but they did cover against Western Michigan. So they're 4-1 against the FBS. Last week, their quarterback Preston Rice. Preston Rice last year was the backup quarterback, but he is now the starter. Look at these numbers against Georgia. 24-33 for 261 yards, despite getting sacked 6 times, and playing a Georgia team that is one of the top 3 teams in the entire country. Murray State gave them a decent game last week, only losing it by 46. And here they're a 40-point dog to Toledo. Let's go look at that average game grade here. Toledo right now playing to an average game grade of 82.3. Murray State playing to 65. So that says there's a 17-point difference. That says Toledo by about 20 points in this game, average game grade. 17. Yeah, that's a 17-point difference. So you're looking at about a 20-point difference average game grade. And once again, Murray State's getting 40 points in this game, and Gadani is questionable for Toledo. So I'm taking Murray State plus 40 over Toledo in this one. And let's wrap up with FIU against New Hampshire. So we're going to click on New Hampshire over here. Now, New Hampshire used to be one of the premier teams in college. Last year, they struggled a little bit. As you can tell, they lost 7 games. They were a 4-7 team last year. And we're going to go take a look at FIU. FIU's a team that last year when they played the weaker teams at home early in the season, they beat UMass 63-24. They beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 55-0. They're expected to be one of the main contenders in their division. James Morgan is an NFL-caliber quarterback. Well, like last week against Western Kentucky, it's 7-7 in the second quarter, and James Morgan goes out with injury. Now, Morgan is supposed to play this week, which would be big. Because Keelan Wiggins only hit 2 of 6 passes. So with Morgan back, they need a win. They're 0-2 right now. His injury had a lot to do with their loss to Western Kentucky last week. And Tulane's a really good team that they played on the road in the opener. We saw Tulane last week give a really good game against Auburn. So Tulane's a good team. They're playing to an average game grade right now of 68.2. Let's look at New Hampshire. They were 4-7 last year. They beat Holy Cross 28-0. Last week they lost to Holy Cross 13-10. This is a New Hampshire team that has a new quarterback, only 13 returning starters, playing to an average game grade of 52.5. FIU playing to an average game grade of 68.2. So right there you got a 16-point difference. Factor in the home edge, you're looking at a 19-point difference. Factor in the must-win situation. This team's 0-2. You got yourself a pretty good situation here for FIU because they're only laying 9.5, much like last week with Colorado State in their game. Colorado State was only laying about 10.5 in a must-win situation. So I like Florida International minus 9.5 against New Hampshire. And like I mentioned, you can get Inside the Press Box. Inside the Press Box has got off to a slow start this year. 2 losing weeks out of 2 so far. Now, you know it's going to bounce back and bounce back big. I got my first high-scoring game of the week going this week. Go ahead and check out this week's issue. Take 50% off. Just go to InsideThePressBox.com, and when you go there, you can hit subscribe now. You can get the individual issue right here. College Weekly, NFL Weekly. If you type in the code word STEEL19, you take 50% off this or $20 off the season package at InsideThePressBox.com. And once again, if you sign up for the season package, you get Phil Steele Plus for free. I'm going to keep shooting these videos out to you every week. I want you to utilize the Phil Steele Plus site to its fullest. And I also want to keep dishing out these free winners, which have had a great track record now. So far, over the last 2 years, 51, 23, and 5, 69%. To keep them free, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit the bell. We will notify you whenever they come up. And tell me what you want to see on those Wednesday reports down below. Go ahead and give me your comments. And thank you for watching the Phil Steele Plus Tour.